Hey, welcome to the Ken Again podcast. My name is Ken Russell, former City of Miami Commissioner, here to talk to you about things environmental and governmental. And we got a couple of big crises on our hands right now. And this falls under the bucket of government putting things where they don't belong. And specifically, I'm talking about the Everglades. Both of these two environmental potential catastrophes are being based on former airport sites, abandoned airports. Both are either abutting or in the middle of the Everglades, and both have tremendous environmental consequences being masked under good government or solving other problems. But of course, the Everglades will always be the butt of these jokes as we try to solve problems and dump things far away from people. Unfortunately, the animals don't have their own voice, so we need to speak for them. So I'm going to talk to you about these two things. One is the Alligator Alcatraz, very pressing, you've heard a lot about. And the other is the country's largest garbage incinerator. And I'm going to talk to you about why these are being placed where they are, what the government's official line is. I'm going to help you read between the lines, and then I'm going to talk to you a lot about the Miccosukee tribe and what their position is on this issue and how you can help them out in advocating against these issues which would harm our environment. So again, the Ken Again podcast, thanks for joining. Here we go. Alligator Alcatraz. This is an initiative of the DeSantis administration, state-level government, in a national preserve. This is the Big Cypress National Preserve, which abuts the Everglades National Park. It's not where you think of the River of Grass. It's a little west of there, exactly in the middle of the state, in the area that you think of as the swamps with the cypress trees and the alligators and the pythons and the whole thing. Well, the pythons shouldn't be there, but they are. This is an idea of how DeSantis wants to address the immigration crisis, and I'm using air quotes because that's the guise under which he is able to bypass all of the environmental standards that we have to protect our environmental federal assets. This is a thing called NEPA, N-E-P-A. This is the National Environmental Policies Act, and anytime you're touching federal land and you want to build something, all these multi-governmental agencies have to weigh in on whether you're meeting the appropriate environmental standards to build or do whatever it is that you want to do. All of that's out the window. All that's being bypassed. Governor DeSantis is showing us how fast he can move on something that he really cares about. And I'm not talking about affordable housing or the insurance crisis. I'm talking about how do we get immigrants out of our country? And that's the emergency he's acting upon. And using that state of emergency, he is erecting a tent city out in the Everglades. Now, it's not in the swamp, it's swamp adjacent. It's on an old abandoned airport. And the history of this airport is fascinating. This is the old jetport site from the late 1960s. And the irony here will be evident in just a moment. This site was going to be the country's largest airport, a hub in the middle of the swamp here. And this airport had started construction until Everglades and environmental groups spoke out. The tribes spoke out and were able to stop it. And this actually led to the creation under President Nixon of everything from the EPA, NEPA, which I just mentioned, and even the national park, the preserve that became. That all came out of that fight, that success for environmentalists. And now here we are back again on the exact same location, fighting further bad development, which will have a negative environmental impact on the Everglades. Now, let's talk about that environmental impact. They're going to put potentially up to 5,000 detainees there. And they would like you to think that these are the worst of the worst criminals in the entire world that have all breached our borders just to hurt our people. But in fact, these are going to be a lot of people that you and I know, our neighbors, people that work in our neighborhoods and in our communities who actually have homes, have their own businesses, have jobs, maybe have been here for decades, have even had children here in the United States. Maybe they were under temporary protected status, which is now being eliminated, and they will be subject to detainment and eviction from the country. Maybe they've overstayed a visa or they're in process on their road to citizenship. You know, there's a lot of twisty paths, as we know here in South Florida, to get to citizenship in the United States, and a lot of people are running from really bad things to get here. And our hope is that we have the patience to help them through that process and not just shut the door. Yes, of course, everybody should be on board with advocating against illegal crimes in our country, criminals who are doing bad things. Now, their paper status shouldn't be on that list when it comes to how they are grabbed out of the streets and detained in a place like this out in the Everglades or sent away without any due process. Everyone should be given due process. All of that aside, let's look at just the site itself. With these tents for up to 5,000 detainees, and of course the entire staff, the National Guard is about to deploy 100 armed people to secure the site. It's meant to open up tomorrow, actually. I'm not sure what day we'll be airing this, but Tuesday on July 1st, it's meant to open up. President Trump is meant to go there with Governor DeSantis and celebrate how fast they are moving for mass deportation, but at what expense? Governor DeSantis has been an advocate for Everglades restoration and has helped marshal much monies that would actually elevate roads and increase water flow to the south. All of that reputation stands to be lost if he takes this priority of mass deportation over Everglades restoration and environmental stewardship. We'd like to believe that he's sincere when he advocates for all of these programs and funding to help water flow in the Everglades, but all that seems to go by the wayside when something exciting like mass deportation and helping Trump with that comes into play. So we're hoping that this is stopped, not only because they're not following the right process, but it is the wrong thing to do overall for both environmental and social reasons. But we're hoping that advocates who are fighting against this prevail. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of those advocates. Friends of the Everglades has joined in a lawsuit that's really about the NEPA process and that the government is not doing any of the environmental steps that they should, and they're just jamming this, shoehorning this into the middle of the Everglades. And of course, as one of the primary advocacy groups for Everglades restoration, they're speaking up and they're putting their money where their mouth is with this lawsuit. But the most vocal and leading a lot of the protests that you're going to see in the news is Betty Osceola of the Miccosukee tribe. I spoke with Betty this morning, and she is very heartfelt and very resolute about this. If there's any group of people who has been more tolerant of actual immigrants in this country, it would be the Native American tribes in our country, because all of us are immigrants to them. So the irony that we are now trying to kick people out of our country and using their land to do it, it's a little bit sad. So Betty is very, as I said, resolute. She's one of those no BS when you talk to her kind of people. She talks about healing the Everglades, and she knows what every single advocacy group around the state is pushing for when it comes to Everglades restoration. But her point of view has a lot to do with water coming south, clean water when it's appropriate. And when it's appropriate is talks about, when I say that, I mean, you don't want to overflood the Everglades when they shouldn't be. You don't want them starving when they shouldn't be. There's an ebb and flow to the tide of the River of Grass, which is meant to be restored. And it's all been disrupted because in the 1920s, after a massive hurricane in Okeechobee, the Army Corps replumbed the state and messed up that entire water flow. So when she says healing the Everglades, Betty's talking about trying to undo what was done 100 years ago, and that's what all these billions of dollars have been done to help redirect that flow from Lake Okeechobee down through the Everglades and out to Florida Bay once again. Now, that water needs to be clean. And you'll hear about a lot of projects at the south end of Lake Okeechobee that are meant to scrub that water and clean it. But what if on the way down here, we place a 5,000 person detainment camp that does not have the infrastructure for wastewater? Where is that wastewater going to go? What happens if there's any sort of a spill? What sort of safeguards are they putting in place for everything? The black water, the gray water, the trash, everything that happens when an impact like this goes into a natural environment. The lights, the noise, this is not what was meant to be out there. And so what Betty Osceola has done as an advocate has stood outside that jetport, Dade Collier Airport every day protesting. I was there with her 2 weeks ago when the news first broke about this, and there was probably about maybe 100 people out there protesting and talking about where this should be, how this is not a partisan issue. It's not left or right, red or blue. This is about the environment and about the tribes and the issues that they face, and how this is really stepping on them once again, on their land and on their environment. This past weekend, another protest came about organically. Betty was there again, but this time over 1,000 people came. And Betty is not asking for more protesters to come. This is now getting a little bit dangerous as people go out there for social media, and they're trying to help get the word out. But we're talking about a 50-mile-an-hour highway cutting through the Everglades with about a 6-foot shoulder on either side. And now you've got 1,000 advocates out there. The word is out. We're not trying to push for more people to come out, but please continue to help spread the word. Support Friends of the Everglades in their lawsuit, and stand with Betty Osceola. Follow her on all of her socials so that you get a good reading of what the true goals should be and what we should, the side we should all be standing on. The parallel between Alligator Alcatraz, as the government's calling it, I call it Gator Gitmo, and the incinerator that Miami-Dade County is planning to put in the Everglades, it's uncanny. Both are on abandoned airport sites. One is in the middle of the Everglades, and the other one abuts the Everglades. This is the country's largest garbage incinerator, and they're calling it a... actually, we got the wrong picture up. That is, again, the map of the center of the Everglades. The incinerator is on the eastern edge of the Everglades, right abutting civilization and right abutting the Everglades. Literally a stone's throw from the Everglades. Not in the park exactly, like the detainment camp is, but just as affecting on the Everglades as the other would be. Now, we're talking about thousands of tons of garbage going through an incinerator, and the environmental guise under which this is being covered is that it's recycling, because when they burn that garbage, as you saw in that previous image, they then take the heat to these steam turbines, which make electricity. And so they're saying because we are taking garbage and turning it into electricity, it's recycling. But what if the negative impact, the negative footprint environmentally of that conversion to electricity is greater than the benefit gained from that electricity? Should they still be able to call it recycling or renewable energy? No. The carbon footprint of the country's largest garbage incinerator, still just burning garbage as it always has been, is unfixable. They do not have a proper technology to mitigate the carbon emissions from burning garbage like that. So in a county and a state that has emissions goals, that is trying to reverse the effects of man on our climate, this is a step in the wrong direction. So advocacy groups are really pushing for a zero-waste solution. And in full disclosure, I'm a member and advocate working with Sierra Club on this issue, where we've studied what can be done other than burning garbage, and those solutions are out there. But what I want to focus on today is this idea that we can just put things in the Everglades because there's nobody out there. And it's not true. There are tribes out there. There is flora and fauna out there. There is a water flow that we need to protect. And that water flow that goes through there feeds our aquifer. Miami-Dade County pulls over 300 million gallons of water from the aquifer every day. Every day, this shallow aquifer just below the surface is the Biscayne Aquifer, and that's our drinking water source. And that water needs to come down from Lake Okeechobee, whether it's by this incinerator or through Alligator Alcatraz, and it needs to replenish our aquifer. It also helps keep pressure on keeping the salt water from the ocean from infiltrating our aquifer. And it's happening. It's happening. That saltwater line moves westward every year. So we want water to come south, but we want it to be clean. We don't want it to go past an incinerator. We don't want it to go past a detainment camp. And these are all things you need to be aware of. So I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please follow along everywhere you can on social media. Continue to post the information that you learn to help others know why we should be against putting these governmental things where they don't belong. This has been Ken Russell with the Ken Again podcast. Thanking you for tuning in and staying environmental.